Hey folks, welcome back to Dub Africa. This is Chris coming to you live from central Pennsylvania on the evening of October 7th, 2020. Good evening, everybody out there, wherever you may find yourselves around the world, whether it's here in North America, tuning in from the United States, or perhaps to our friends to the North Canada, and our other friends to the south of Mexico and Mexico. Maybe you're watching this debate tonight. This is a debate between the vice presidential candidates. That would be Vice President Mike Pence versus Senator Kamala Harris of California. Tonight's debate will be taking place in Salt Lake City, Utah, and be getting started here in about 15 minutes. Folks, welcome to the channel. Anybody that's tuning in for this, I don't know if we'll have a big audience for this or not. Vice presidential debates are not historically large turnouts, but we'll see what will happen. This debate has taken on especially greater significance after President Trump tested positive for the COVID-19 virus recently and has recently come out of the hospital. Just this week, he left the hospital on Monday, and that has put more attention on this vice presidential debate. This will be the only debate between Harris and Pence during this election season. Neither will be wearing a mask. That's right. And Kamala has left. Apparently, she made a gaffe recently, yet another gaffe, in which she talked about Tupac being the greatest living rapper. And so the Trump campaign has kindly left a ticket for Tupac Shakur at the gate. So if Tupac Shakur makes an appearance tonight, Tupac Shakur will be able to attend the debate courtesy of the Trump campaign. Well, however you feel politically, that is funny, folks. That is funny. Anyway, so yeah, that is the case tonight. We'll see what happens if, in fact, that does happen. Well, welcome into the stream. It won't be too long here. We'll get started now, folks. But both feeds I'm counting on. Neither one of them has actually started any feed yet. So actually, let me see if this one's started in here. This one's all right. That's Fox News. I had not planned on using Fox News, but I will go ahead and switch over to that one. Let me get that down on the screen really quickly. Okay, here we go. Let's get it up on the screen. I need to reduce this first. Make sure you get the right one. Okay. There you go. Got the right one. Okay, so let me address that. I'm going to reduce it to a smaller size. Got about 13 minutes before this debate's supposed to start, folks. So let me move it up to the top there. Just put it in the upper corner so we can watch it in the background. And I'll move it up here. There we go. All right, so you can see that people are sitting very far apart, wearing their prison mask. The hysteria and paranoia over the virus, which is akin to the flu virus. There are folks preparing for the debate there in Salt Lake City, just discussing some of the rules right now. So let me just, I'll pop that on for just a moment. Just a moment, folks. Here we go. Yeah, that is hilarious, Lazon. Left a ticket for Tupac. Let me read that exactly to you, what happened. Let me find that very quickly. So that was beyond hilarious. So the Trump campaign is reportedly leaving a vice presidential debate ticket for Tupac Shakur as a jab at Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, who recently called the hip-hop icon who was killed in 1996 the best rapper alive, even though he died 24 years ago. Trump campaign advisors shared the news on a press call, according to multiple reports. I asked the Trump campaign who Vice President Mike Pence is bringing to tonight's debate. CBS News reporter Nicola Sang tweeted Tuesday. A spokesman responded, Tupac. Well, there you go. She made the gaffe during the NAACP's virtual convention last month after CNN commentator Angela Rye asked, best rapper alive? Yeah, that was a really pertinent question, wasn't it? So important to ask a vice presidential candidate who the best rapper alive is. Well, folks, we see some folks making their way in. Let's see what's going on.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Watkins, president of the University of Utah. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Utah's flagship university. Sincere thanks to the Commission on Presidential Debates for selecting the U to host the nation's only 2020 vice presidential debate. This is the first time that Utah has been the site of an election debate, and we are thrilled that so many will get to know our state and our university through this occasion. Salt Lake City, Utah's capital, is a thriving hub of industry and innovation. Our great state has spectacular outdoor vistas and recreation, a strong economy, a can-do entrepreneurial ethos, and is known for collegiality and collaborative spirit. This vitality is why the University of Utah is on the rise, now recognized as one of America's leading research universities, a member of the prestigious Association of American Universities. Our beautiful campus home is home to outstanding academic programs, including University of Utah Health. University Hospital has been consistently recognized as a top 10 facility for excellence in patient care. And our Huntsman Cancer Institute is a comprehensive cancer center, the highest federal ranking for a cancer research organization. Providing value, high-quality education and healthcare at affordable cost is a defining tenet of our university. Our faculty and our staff are...
Yeah, let's turn that off for a few minutes, folks. Yada, yada, yada. Send all your kids to Utah. Yeah. Thank you. Well, to be fair, they are hosting it, so it is theirs. But Bosch Deborah says, add university ad here. Well, there's the ad right there as she gives it. Bosch Deborah says, notifications working tonight. The Real Monster says, what are your expectations for this debate? Well, my expectations are not particularly high. My honest expectations are Vice President Pence is quite the gentleman. We'll see what he does here, but there's ample opportunity for him to eviscerate Kamala Harris on her record as the district attorney in California, as the attorney general of California, and her role as a senator, in which she co-sponsored a bill that granted refuge to rapists, child molesters, convicted murderers, keeping them here in our country, because she felt that it was our responsibility to bear the burden of illegal criminal aliens who've committed crimes in our country, that we should suffer and keep them here because it wouldn't be fair to send them to their home country, the origin of their evil ethos. That was something she sponsored in the Senate. So I expect Mike Pence to wipe the floor with Kamala Harris tonight. Short of that, I'll be surprised. Beyond that, on the Kamala Harris side, I will expect her to pound Vice President Pence on the usual Democrat leftist talking points, accusing him of racism, accusing him of homophobia because he's a man of faith, all sorts of typical stuff. But the one point that actually has some merit to it, that has value, what is this? All these people are women, or one dude, and they're all people of color. What's that all about, except the lady in charge? Anyway, so Utah, which has 0.5% non-white people, and everybody there is a non-white person except for the president there. Anyway, so just not believable nonsense here. Anyway, so back to the topic. Kamala Harris will, legitimate issues, she'll attack him on COVID, but she'll attack the president. She will attack President Trump more than she'll attack Vice President Pence. Now, I'm sure there'll be an effort on the part of Kamala Harris to paint Vice President Pence's role as the head of the coronavirus task force in a less than flattering light. The problem with that is that, well, the good news for her is that the media have lied about what's happened with that task force since its inception, and they will be able to make a convincing argument. She'll be able to use the media talking points to convince people that Pence has done a poor job, when in fact the record shows quite the opposite. So we'll see. Am I entirely balanced here? No. Obviously, I'm not a fan of Senator Harris, but I will give her a fair shake in this debate, and I will give Vice President Pence a fair shake in this debate. But, up front, I'm not a particularly unbiased observer. I have nothing but disrespect for Senator Harris and her vile, racist, race merchant tactics. So we'll see what happens in the debate tonight, and we'll see how it goes. By the way, folks, she was undone by Tulsi Gabbard. Who? Who might you ask? Tulsi Gabbard? Yeah, have you even heard of Tulsi Gabbard before? Well, in the Democratic debates, Senator Harris was the rising star. She was the wagon train to which the media attached their hitch. They hooked onto her and drug behind her and tried to ride that comet to the vice presidential nomination, only to see her crash and burn when asked legitimate questions about her record as a prosecutor in San Francisco and in Sacramento. She fizzled and burned. Tulsi Gabbard destroyed Kamala Harris's presidential campaign in a single debate performance. And she fell from the scene, virtually disappearing, only to be salvaged off the trash heap of history by Joe Biden, desperate for someone to be on his party platform. Of course, Joe Biden's sole qualification to be his vice presidential running mate was that it had to be a black woman. So there you go. She sort of fills that role. So we will see what happens with tonight's debate, and we will see how she does. But she was destroyed by Tulsi Gabbard. If Tulsi Gabbard can destroy Kamala Harris in 90 seconds, which is what it took, Mike Pence ought to be able to just wipe the floor with her. So we'll see what happens. The moderator for tonight's debate is from USA Today, hardly an objective outlet. She is the Washington bureau chief. The bureau chief for Washington for USA Today. Her name is Susan Page. She's 69 years old. She's a journalist and a biographer, and she's originally from Wichita, Kansas, graduate of Western University and Columbia University. And she's been doing this stuff for a long time. She's covered 6 White House administrations and 10 presidential elections. So she knows her stuff. I'm not very familiar with her. We'll see if she's objective. That is not her. That is not her. We'll see if she's objective. That remains to be seen. But what is definitely the case is that the USA Today is a leftist media outlet owned by Gannett. Gannett is an organization used to have Al Neuharth. Here she is. All right, folks, let's get her on the screen.
It says Hamilton has nothing on the Commission on Presidential Debates when it comes to exclusive tickets. I want to offer a special welcome to Vice President Pence's family, I think is there, and to Senator Kamala Harris's family on this side, and most especially to my bosses who are seated right up there, and I'm very glad that they came and joined us. My bosses from USA Today and from Gannett. We're glad that you're here.
Gannett, the leftists.
But this debate is not about you, and it's not about me. It's about the millions of Americans who are going to be watching it. And that's why I'm going to ask you for your help. I'm going to ask you for your silence. I'm going to ask you during the debate not to cheer or to boo or to hiss or to laugh.
What's the point?
Because that is distracting for the people we are really staging this debate
Those who are
to
winning.
reach. There will be 2 times when you can applaud. That will be when I announce the 2 candidates on the stage. They'll come on the stage simultaneously. That'll be a time to applaud. And then applaud again at the very end of the debate. But if you could keep restrain your enthusiasm between those 2 times, I'd appreciate it. And if you could send me a little good karma, that would also be appreciated, but quietly. I'm going now to sit down and get settled and turn my back to you, but not in a rude way. And I'll see you on the other side. Thanks again for being here.
Well, folks, so far so good. Very polite, very professional. That lady is 69 years of age, looking good for herself. She's obviously taking care of herself. The candidates will be coming out here shortly. We're about 3 minutes away from the start of this vice presidential debate, this one in Salt Lake City, Utah. By the way, folks, it's the only debate between the vice presidential candidates in this season's election, which takes place less than a month from tonight, 4 Tuesdays from now on the 3rd of November. And if you believe the latest polls from Fox News, which somehow has become a talking piece for the Democratic National Committee, Donald Trump now trails by 10 to 15 points behind Joe Biden. Joe Biden is trusted as the person to save everything in America except the economy, despite the fact that he's yet to announce a single policy position, a single platform position. Yeah, there's a platform out there, but his ability to elaborate on and explain it is non-existent. When asked questions, he dithers and deflects and goes to, there you see the outside of Kingsbury Hall at the university. That's right, on the campus there. Classic looking sort of building. Kind of reminds you almost like a Jefferson Memorial or something like, not Jefferson Memorial, but the Lincoln Memorial there in D.C., almost much smaller scale, obviously. But that's where tonight's debate is taking place in Salt Lake City, folks. It's still daytime out there. Here it's dark on the east coast of the United States, already nearly 9 p.m. Of course, for those in South Africa, it's nearly 3 a.m. at this point. So welcome to Erica, Robin, Grant, Ants, Bosch Zebra, Robin, Dandelion. Looks like Trumpelstiltskin. Lots of folks from South Africa watching this tonight. I'm glad to see you guys up. D. Stu, good to see you. No, Chris Wallace is not moderating. That's who it is right there, that lady. And then, let's see, who else is there? Trumpelstiltskin is here. Yeah, the moderator is Susan Page, the bureau chief for the USA Today, a leftist newspaper that is only surviving because of hotels keeping it in their hotels. So I wonder what damage the Rona has done to USA Today's circulation. I haven't been to a hotel in 8 months, and I'm accustomed to being in hotels 6 to 8 nights a month, every month for the past 30 years when I'm not deployed. So that is interesting. But she's won several awards for her work, including the Merriman Smith Memorial Award, the Aldo Beckman Memorial Award, the Gerald Ford Prize for Distinguished Reporting on the Presidency twice. And she has the Sigma Delta Chi Distinguished Service Award, obviously a alumnus of that sorority or fraternity. People are chatting. That's a news reporter in the background with a big mouth. You can hear it on microphone. You shouldn't be hearing that, folks. That's not from this network. That's someone else who's speaking. But anyway, she's been around a while. As I said, she's covered 6 different White House administrations and 10 presidential elections, folks. That's quite impressive. Works for the USA Today. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's the newspaper that introduced color ink in a daily newspaper a long time ago, back in the 1980s. You could originally buy the USA Today for 25 cents an edition. It was quite brilliant, but somewhere along the way, the USA Today went from being a comprehensive newspaper to just kind of a, I don't know, what do you want to call it? What's the word I want to look for here? But they stopped reporting the news and just really going with wire services. They used to have some really good news coverage, but now it's mostly wire services. All right, there we go. I've adjusted that so you don't get my timelines in the bottom. People still chatting in the background. Folks, it's now 9 p.m. here on the East Coast, the 7th of October, 2020. And you can see that both candidates will be seated during this debate, which is interesting, rather than standing. And there's a plexiglass barrier between the two of them. You can see that maybe not so well on the screen, but there is a plexiglass barrier. You'll be able to see it when they get closer and the screen comes up. D-Stu says biased news coverage. Well, to be fair, in the interest of full disclosure, D-Stu, my preliminary marks have been biased as well. Not entirely objective, and I admit that up front, that my comments about Senator Harris were not entirely objective, although I think I was fair in stating where she will go after Vice President Pence on legitimate issues. Looks like a cozy setup. Yeah, it's a lovely setup. I mean, I like that half moon, that oval shape there. The tables, I love the carpet they've put down. It's quite beautiful. The fact that there's virtually nobody in the audience is ludicrous. But, of course, we are terrified of a virus that kills 0.15% of those who are infected by it. Just barely more than influenza. And depending on the age group, it's even less infectious than influenza. So I guess we have to be paranoid of it and spend the rest of our lives living in isolation, breaking down creating social barriers, and raising children who are unable to communicate effectively with adults because they can't gauge their facial expressions because their entire face is constantly hidden behind the coward mask. Now, for those who actually have genuine fears of the virus and a comorbidity underlying compromised immune system, I'm not commenting on you. I'm commenting on the politicians who have subjected all of us to this and kept us from developing herd immunity and have put us in a precarious position in which we'll continually see new waves of the virus because people who've been kept away from it wind up coming in contact with it one way or another. It is interesting to see the left lose their mind when Trump turned up positive. Aha, he got what he deserved. Well, everybody that came within 50 feet of Donald Trump was tested. So Trump getting the COVID virus proves that the testing myth was a myth. Testing people does not stop the virus. I said that since February. It also disproves the myth about wearing a mask protects you because there were people who were at the event that the media claims is where this happened. Of course, that's a precarious claim. The nomination ceremony for Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Barrett, was brought out, and they drew little circles on the map. Look at all these Republicans who got the coronavirus. Well, a few of those people who got the coronavirus were wearing masks at that event. So clearly the mask doesn't protect you either. Another myth disputed and disproved. I don't know what the delay is here, folks. Maybe Kamala or maybe Mike are just kind of chilling out, but they're not chilling up for the debate. The sooner they show up, the sooner we get started. Ant says, I remember newspapers in tablet form. Were you reading cuneiform there, Ants? These 15, 10 commandments. History of the World, Part 1, Mel Brooks. Gotta love that line. He walks out, Moses walks out, the 15, 3 tablets. These 15, he drops one. These 10 commandments. Good stuff. Try and argue those myths here in South Africa. Yeah, no, that's true. Daz, oh, here we go. Is she ready?
Good evening. From the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, welcome to the first and only vice presidential debate of 2020, sponsored by the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm Susan Page of USA Today. It is my honor to moderate this debate, an important part of our democracy. In Kingsbury Hall tonight, we have a small and socially distant audience, and we've taken extra precautions during this pandemic. Among other things, everyone in the audience is required to wear a face mask, and the candidates will be seated 12 feet apart. The audience is enthusiastic about their candidates, but they've agreed to express that enthusiasm only twice, at the end of the debate and now when I introduce the candidates. Please welcome California Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence.
She's wearing trousers, as is Vice President Pence. Neither is wearing a skirt tonight. I'd half expect to see a skirt on one of them, or both. but neither's wearing a skirt. So Pence is on the right, and Kamala Harris is on the left. Imagine that.
Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete recovery and for the recovery of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus.
Why is she talking about that?
The two campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for tonight. I'm here to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching. One note, no one in either campaign or at the Commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask.
So Donna Brazile wasn't involved in this.
This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption by me or the other candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots? A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Thank you, Susan. Well, the American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January 28th, the Vice President and the President were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said, you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that Joe Biden has and that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that, and frankly, this administration has forfeited their right to re-election based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, more than 210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? and you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you. Our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. Before, there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China. President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done, and that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resource and support they needed. And we began, really, before the month of February was out, to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe, will have literally tens of millions of doses of a vaccine before the end of this year. The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way. I mean, quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about. And I think the American people know that this is a president who has put the health of America first, and the American people, I believe with my heart, can be proud of the sacrifices they have made and saved countless American lives.
Burn on
Senator
Biden.
Harris, would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country, American lives that have been lost, families that are grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
no, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to add, but
here.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
weigh
speaking.
in.
Yeah, you can
So
have 15 more
wanna-
seconds, and then we'll give the Vice President
Thank
a
you.
chance to
So I
respond.
want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back? How calm were you when your
Senator
children
Harris.
couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to respond.
You know, there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one. And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts and in our prayers. But when you say what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked, that's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made.
I'm referring
The
to
reality,
the
if I may finish, Senator, the reality is Dr. Fauci said everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd get through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. Now, that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also
Thank you,
said
Vice
to us, if
President
we
Pence.
did everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice President
Now, one
Pence.
life lost is too
Thank you.
many, Susan. But the American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their neighbors first, our doctors, our nurses, our first
Thank you, Vice
responders.
President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the American people have done.
Vice President Pence, you were your administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first. President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day, we surged resources to New Jersey and New York and New Orleans and Detroit. We told the American people what needed to be done, and the American people made the sacrifices. When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality is the work of the President of the United States goes on. A vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President.
At that, if I may say, that Rose Garden event, there's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested for coronavirus, and it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and I trust the American people to make choices in the best interest of their health. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris consistently talk about mandates, and not just mandates with the coronavirus.
He needs to stop
a
overstepping
government
his time.
takeover
This
of
is gonna
health
Thank
care,
you. Thank you.
the
very
Green
much.
New Deal, all
right,
government
VP,
control.
enough.
We're about freedom and respecting the freedom
Major
of the
point.
American people.
Major point.
Let's
Move
talk
on.
about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader,
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker, knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people. So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked about
Vice
It is
President
asking too much of the people.
Look-
That they would not be equipped with the information they need to help themselves to protect
Susan,
their
the
parents
President-
and
No,
their
I'm
children.
sorry. Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's fine, I'm Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me.
Talk about mansplaining.
For life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But
There's
half
no
of
vaccine,
Americans now say they
dipshit.
wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now. If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it, absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Vice President Pence, there have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on
well,
to the
thank
issue
you,
of
but I would like to
vice
go back
presidency.
because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trials, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is it's just unacceptable. And let me also say, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was Vice President of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was Vice President, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own Chief of Staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the Strategic National Stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we still learned from it. And I think the American people, I'm going to say again, can be proud
Vice President Pence, I'm sorry,
of what we have done. And Senator, please stop undermining confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19, gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now, I know would make her proud, and she must be looking down on this. Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about the value and the dignity of public service, and about the importance of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners, to for-profit colleges that were taking advantage of veterans. And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I've been in regular receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose which is about lifting up the American people. And after the 4 years that we have seen of Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released a sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital the White House doctors was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination.
Thank you.
I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year. And the stakes have never been higher, but I think the choice has never been clearer.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond to the same question I asked, which is, do voters have a right to know
I thought he gets 2
more
minutes.
detailed
That
health
wasn't 2 minutes.
information about presidential candidates, and especially about presidents, especially when they're facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely, and that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes. We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000? And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know what is influencing the President's decisions. And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you, or self-interest? So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
But the American people have a president who's a businessman, he's a job creator, who's paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. He's created tens of thousands of American jobs. And the president said those public reports are not accurate. And the president's also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice
and
President.
turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation, unleashing American
Vice President
energy,
Pence.
fighting for free and fair trade, and all of that's on the
Vice
line
President
if
Pence.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, that's a
in the
good
White
segue into our third
great
topic,
segue.
which is about the economy. This has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, Blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing. which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for. On day one, Joe Biden
Obama doubled
will
the
repeal
debt.
that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some...
Shovel ready, Joe. Shovel ready, Kamala.
But
Where's
Joe
your
Biden
mind
will do
at?
that.
Where's
He'll
my
invest in
damn shovel
infrastructure.
ready
It's about
package?
upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family that makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000.
Who's paying for this, China?
It's about the economy, which is it's about investing in the people of our country, as opposed to passing a tax bill, which had the benefit of letting American corporations go offshore to do their business.
No, it brought the money back,
Thank
you
you.
dingus.
Senator
Oh my
Harris.
God,
Vice
everything she
President
just said
Pence,
was
your
complete,
administration has been
total
predicting rapid and
falsehood, a lie.
robust
Every bit of what
recovery.
she just said.
But the latest economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer, uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. Because when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of 4 had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, the average household income for a family of 4 increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think, Susan. I mean, right after a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height, we've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, fought for free and fair trade, and secured $4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families, save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally have spared no expense to help the American people and the American worker through this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland. And Joe Biden wants to go back to the economic surrender to China, that when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth and opportunity, 4 more years of President Donald Trump. 2021 is going to be the biggest economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator Harris.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait,
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000.
She just said it too.
Break every single year.
That
Senator,
is
she lied.
absolutely
And then
not
she said,
true.
tell the
That
truth.
tax
is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
You just interrupted him with a rude laugh when he was giving facts.
Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who, during the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford.
24 million working Americans lost their health insurance under the Affordable Care Act.
Thank you, Senator
Trying
Harris.
to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections.
Overrunning her time again. Overrunning her time. Even warned this time. She's still yapping.
But we need to give Vice President.
I just like to, he interrupted me. And
No, he didn't. You interrupted him
Please.
twice.
If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you.
What about your
If
pre-existing
you love
condition?
someone who has a
Stupidity.
pre-existing condition,
Thank you,
they're
Senator
coming
Harris.
for you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents'
That's 40
coverage,
seconds
they're
extra
coming
time,
for you.
45
Senator Harris,
seconds
thank
extra
you.
time,
Well, let me
50
give you a
seconds
chance to
extra
respond.
time.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well. And President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now will continue with 4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. Our water is among the cleanest in the world. And just a little while ago, the President signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years. So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment. Now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. But the issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation, and we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
there are no more hurricanes today than there were 100 years ago.
Thank you.
But many of the climate alarmists
Pence,
use
I'm sorry, your time
hurricanes
is up.
and wildfires to try and
Thank
sell
you,
their
Vice
bill of
President
goods of
Pence.
a Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put
Thank you,
American
Vice
jobs and
President
American
Pence.
workers first.
Senator Harris, as the Vice President mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress. But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa, whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out, the Green New Deal is on their campaign website. And as USA Today said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate. And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit America to the Paris Climate Accord. Look, the American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us to retrofit 4 million American business buildings It makes no sense. It will cost jobs. President Trump is going to put America first. He's going to put jobs first, and we're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
Thank you,
But, on the issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war. You lost it. What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy because of it. We are in a manufacturing recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. We have a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old, who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond, because then I want to move on to
Well, I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, this administration saw 500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through this pandemic. But a Green New Deal, your massive new mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I just need to respond very briefly,
15 seconds, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll move
Thank
on.
you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China. We have, as our next topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. Everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. The American people deserve to know that. Is probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019, more liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now, with regard to China, look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus. And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel from China. He said it was hysterical. He said it was
Thank you, Vice
xenophobic.
President Pence.
But President Trump has
Vice President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time is
China.
up.
We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden. For example, they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got rid of it.
Not true.
There was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, you know, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, you know, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. Got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So, Russia, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO. He has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific, and we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader, al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look,
President.
we destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President
terrorism.
Pence.
President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad
Thank you,
to do
Vice President
harm
Pence.
to Americans, President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer, our allies are safer, and the American people know President Donald Trump will never
Thank you,
hesitate
Vice President
to take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length, because of course there are other topics we want to talk about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because, of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take what he said about John McCain, a great American hero. And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank you.
Joe Biden would, but Joe Biden would hold Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And
Susan,
I want to make sure we have a chance
I really have
to talk
to respond to that.
about.
Look, she has
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry, but Vice President Pence, you've had more time than she's had so far.
The slanders against President Donald Trump regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son
Pence.
is a captain in the United
Yes.
States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump
She tried to cut him off at
respects, but
7
reveres
seconds.
all of those who serve in our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
Thank
me
you,
also
Vice
say
President Pence.
the
Vice
The
President
American
Pence,
people deserve, Susan,
Vice
the
President
American
Pence,
people
I
deserve to
didn't,
know.
Vice President
there's a
Pence, I did not.
that you
Excuse
can't
me.
deny.
Susan, the
I did
American
not
people
create
deserve
the
to know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden
Your
and
campaign
Kamala-
You're not enforcing them either.
To the rules for tonight's debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which
Well, you're here
involves
to
moving
skew
from
the
one topic
debate.
to another, giving roughly equal time.
There
to
was
both
no
of
roughly
you,
equal time.
which is
2
why
minutes
I'm
and
trying very
18
hard.
seconds is not
So I
7
want to go
seconds.
ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Yes. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes.
What kind of question is that? She
Well,
said
thank you for
Supreme
the
Court,
question,
not
but
Indiana.
I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others, we hope she gets a fair hearing. And we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views and
Thank you.
pro-marriage views.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
So
Your
my
time
hope
is
is
up.
that when the hearing takes place,
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion. And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as President of the United States.
Only she did do exactly that
On the
in the
issue
Senate hearings.
of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And, you know, before, when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections, if they win, for people with pre-existing conditions. Yeah. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Thank you, Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator
That's true
Harris.
leadership.
You know, you mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864...
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
No, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. in 1864.
After you stole 23
one
seconds of his time, you're
I think
speaking.
political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election, and it was 27 days before the election, and a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States, and then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
Thank you,
And
Senator
the
Harris.
people, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once
Come
again
on.
gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
the
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and
Mr.
women,
Vice President,
I got to tell you,
think
people across this country, if you cherish our Supreme Court, if you cherish the separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So the Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question. So I think maybe the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question, but I think the American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require a national registry for police officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and we will decriminalize marijuana, and we will expunge the records of those who have been convicted of marijuana. This is a time for leadership on a tragic issue of unarmed black people in America who have been killed.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. It was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. Look, we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and that is improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
Record unemployment, record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our minorities.
Thank you, Vice President.
I'd like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges for taking advantage of our veterans. And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. He, on the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting.
I'm sorry, I can't tolerate this any longer. Muslim ban, fiction, lies, everything she's saying is an absolute lie.
And on the other side, there were neo-Nazis
she should be cut off by the
carrying
moderator.
tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have
Nope,
as the
more
president of
lies.
the United States.
No,
and America,
Susan.
you
Oh,
deserve
look at that
better.
finger pointing. Look at
Joe
that.
Biden will be a president who brings our country together
Senator Harris,
and,
thank you.
and recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we
Senator-
all have so
15-second
much more in
response.
common
She's
than
been
what
talking for
separates
45
us.
lies.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a
Unbelievable.
minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did, comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the American people. But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney General of California,
Thank you,
you
Vice President.
increased the disproportionate incarceration of
Thank
blacks
you.
in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to
you.
pass
Those
the
are
first step
factual
back on Capitol
points.
Hill.
Look at her shaking her head,
The
Wyatt.
reality is your record
Thank
speaks
you,
for
Vice
itself.
President
President
Pence.
Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President
We fought for
Pence.
educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our
Thank you,
minorities.
sir.
And we'll do it for 4 more
Thank you.
years.
You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election
But
itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of
I
time.
appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holes.
Thank you.
Not only,
Thank you, Senator
I would
Harris.
like to go through.
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
But I
conclude our
want to talk
debate.
about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President on our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military, we revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last 4 years. But when you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. It's amazing. When Joe Biden was Vice President of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. And we have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along?" And then she added, "Your examples could make all the difference to bring us together," end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. And in America, We believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. But I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States, one very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument. But we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you,
in
Vice
times of
President.
need. And we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, you know, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. You mean you have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has known love. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your work and through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall-style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us then. Good evening.
Wow, that was something else, folks. Both got equal time at the end there. That was interesting. About 138, 139 before Paige cut them off. Wow. Wow. Okay, well, let's be civil, but be gone. All right, yeah, bye. Okay, get off the stage. All of y'all. All of y'all get off the stage. Wow. All right, we're here. The camera's snapping, folks. I'm going to take them off the screen here in just a moment. I'm just leaving if anything spark plugs fly here before they head off. Well, she does have a lovely smile, but most fraudsters do. So, folks, I'm not going to even try to be neutral on this. I got to tell you, just absolutely ridiculous. All right, so I'm going to caveat my grades for both performances with a few disclaimers. All right, so let's get that off the stage. And they're gone now, folks. That's the end of that debate. That's the one and only vice presidential debate, ladies and gentlemen. So let me go ahead and fix my camera there very quickly so we get transformed back up. And I'm going to give you my comments and closing out. So let me just go ahead and take care of that so that that is done. All right, folks, I've got that off the screen now. All right, so here we go. Wow. What an interesting situation. Okay, first off, Vice President Pence gets negative points for me for habitually running over in the beginning. Also, repeatedly going back to the previous question and using up a lot of his time for the next question. Bad form early on, didn't work particularly well. I'm not going to penalize him heavily for that because the moderator was cheating time. As I pointed out on at least two occasions, she cut him off at 1:48 and 1:50 into a 2-minute conversation, yet let Kamala Harris go to 2:08, 2:12, 2:15 in her 2 minutes. And then several times as the debate progressed, she interrupted Pence. He ended early one time at 1:37, and Kamala Harris, he asked Kamala Harris a question. She refused to answer the question and then launched into a response, which was a rebuttal to Pence. She was given over 2 minutes in that rebuttal, which is supposed to be 15 seconds according to the rules, but was treated as if it was her turn to answer a question that was never asked by the moderator. Then Pence responds back to it and gets cut off 7 seconds into it. And there's the nature of what we had there. I will say that Paige was far better than Chris Wallace. She actually was a legitimate moderator, but her bias was pretty clear, raising the race merchant questions like Breonna Taylor and also asking ludicrous questions of President or Vice President Pence. That said, ladies and gentlemen, I will say the following. The problem I have with grading Kamala Harris is not a single comment that she made was actually the truth. Every single thing she said was an utter, provable lie. Everything. Not a single thing was true. She denied that she was against fracking when she clearly is against fracking. She denied that Joe Biden will stop fracking when he's clearly put ads out back during the Democratic primaries that he would stop fracking. He has told people when asked the question he would stop fracking, which will cost thousands of jobs here in Pennsylvania. She lied about everything. She lied about prosecuting child molesters. Not a single case, ladies and gentlemen, of her prosecuting a Catholic priest for child molestation in San Francisco during 8 years as the district attorney. 8 years. 4 years as the attorney general of California, and she failed to prosecute any child molestation cases there. Utter lies. Total tissue of lies. How can I give her a grade when she failed to tell the truth on anything other than what her name is? That's all she told the truth on. She told the truth on her name. So, obviously, I'm biased in favor of Mike Pence. I'm telling that up front. But I have also been critical of his running over and his failure to address the questions properly. But by 30 minutes into this debate, Pence was on form, and he hit her time and again with the facts. Oh, I'm sorry, Robin, you are correct. She did get Joe Biden's name correct. I'm sorry. She got that correct, too. That is also another truth that she told, so to speak. But let me go through some of the comments here. This utter lie. 1 in 5 businesses closed. Why are 1 in 5 businesses closed? And I blame Pence for this, too, because he said the president shut down the economy. The president never shut down the economy. The economy was shut down at the state and local level by governors and mayors. Stop lying to the American people. Pence, you know better than that. You must have been caught off guard, and you just went with it. But she says 1 in 5 businesses closed. That's not true. 1 in 5 businesses were shut down by capricious decisions by governors, which drove them out of business. That's the truth. They didn't shut down because of economic failure. They shut down because of government action, government-imposed restrictions. That's the truth. 30 million people filed for unemployment. Yeah, and? They got it, didn't they? Unlike South Africa, where people aren't getting paid from unemployment insurance fund, people actually got unemployment here in the United States because our system worked. Then this fraudulent claim based on lies from Bob Woodward trying to sell books, telling people that the president knew that this was a dangerous virus in January and failed to tell people. Not true. Not true. He took actions which made it clear that they were concerned about this, including stopping flights from China. Then she tired this nonsense from Bob Woodward. He covered it up. No, and they don't have a plan. Don't have a plan. Oh my God, the amount of stuff this administration has done at the federal level is astounding. They have a plan. They followed it. I also like how they talk about 200,000 people dead, but they never point out the fact that given the scope of things and what was happening in this country and the nature of our open society and fluid transportation and rapid movement around the country, that if the government didn't take any action at all, the scientists, the doctors, the ones you follow blindly, Kamala, or you so to claim, you and Joe Biden, predicted 2 million plus deaths from this in January. Trump took action. 31st of January, stopped flights from China, except for Americans returning, were supposed to isolate themselves and refused, many of them, and spread the virus. There is the problem, because he didn't have the authority to stick them in lockup. He should have stuck them in lockup like we did the soldiers coming back from Liberia to Italy in 2014. When they came back in 2014, they were locked up at Longari for 3 weeks to make sure they didn't have the virus. Should have done the same damn thing with all those people from China. Just locked them up. Yeah, okay, a hoax. It's a hoax. Our plan is about a national strategy, contact tracing, the vaccine. We need to get ahead of what's going on. Not a damn thing mentioned about their plan. That was Harris's response. Gobbledygook. Didn't explain anything about the so-called plan that Joe Biden has, all of which has been the plan that the president has presented. Nothing new here. Then the moderator says, our death rate is 2.5 times ahead of that of Canada. Why is it higher than any other country? Well, not a legitimate question. Why is it only 1/10 of what was predicted? No credit for limiting it to just 1/10 of what was predicted. Oh, by the way, it's also not the true figure. No discussion of the fraudulent numbers here. It's not 200,000. That's a fraud. That's a fraud. Pence was wasting time thanking folks at the beginning. That got old. 5 cases in the U.S., suspended travel from China. Biden opposed that decision. Xenophobic. Bought us time. That's right. 5 cases. When Trump found of the first 5 cases in America, he started actions to protect Americans. Formed a task force, all these other things, stopped travel from China. With 5 cases in the U.S., he took action. 5 cases in the U.S., he took action. The Chinese didn't take action until tens of thousands of people had COVID-19 back in November, December of 2019. Operation Warp Speed, 10 million people getting doses of vaccine by the end of the year. Well, we don't have a vaccine, so neither one of you can take credit for that or talk about it. Harris is telling lies about the number of deaths. I love what Pence said. He said the Biden plan reads like everything we've been doing. Sounds a lot like plagiarism. That's a hit for Pence. New on January 28th that this was serious. She claims that nonsense again. Carla Ellisway just subscribed. Thank you for that. Page gave her an extra 15 seconds, cut into Pence's response. That's the first of it. Harris then interrupted Pence. Pence makes the point that the claim that this has not worked is not cool with the American people who sacrificed a lot. And again, Pence points out the experts predicted in January that 2.2 million Americans would die. Less than 1/10 of that have died, and even that's a fictional number. We know it's far less than that. Pence ran over his time, which was habitual early on. And then Page talked about the president has no social distancing. That's not true. It's a lie. It's a lie. You're cherry-picking events. You're not pointing out that the fact that anyone who comes within 50 feet of the President of the United States must undergo a test, proving, once again, the tests are invalid. Harris is lying about this question about presidential disability. Pence refused to answer the question initially, but eventually got around to it. Then he hit a home run on the swine flu. This is where Pence began to clean Kamala Harris's clock. While she refuted lies and distortions, every single thing she said, Pence reverted to the facts and the failure of the Obama administration when 65 million Americans got swine flu. 65 million Americans. And as Pence said, we're very fortunate that swine flu wasn't as deadly as COVID-19. If 65 million Americans had gotten COVID-19 instead of 7 million, according to the test results, we'd see a far worse situation. Moderator lied about Trump's physicians. This is where Page showed her bias once again, her partisanship. She lied about Trump's physicians, saying Trump's physicians misled them about the president's condition. No, he didn't. We know the president's condition. Looks pretty good to me. And then she did point out accurately the unemployment rate has dropped to 7.9% after rising based on COVID. That's an impressive drop. It was up over 15%. It's been halved in just a matter of 90 days, 120 days. But then she misled by telling us that the economy has slowed down. Not an accurate statistic based on what's going on. Hundreds of thousands of workers have stopped looking for work. That's Page's assertion. That's an opinion. Page said hundreds of thousands of workers have stopped working. No Bureau of Labor Statistics there. No facts there. She just simply made an assertion. This is yet one of 4 times she made an assertion that was fraudulent, all directed at the vice president and putting him on the back foot. But he did a great job answering it. She did, honestly, turn to Kamala Harris and ask her, well, what about your plan to your candidate's plan to raise taxes by $4 trillion? And then Kamala Harris says, no, it's not true. We're not going to raise taxes, only on people making more than $400,000. Well, yeah, that means you're raising taxes on individuals and corporations. And every time you raise tax on corporations, you cost us jobs. Yeah, but to her credit, I will say that Page did ask, won't this curb in entrepreneurialism, which, of course, was not answered by Kamala Harris. Harris said the health and strength of the American health and strength of the American economy is the health and strength of the American worker. Oh, well, thank you for that campaign slogan. No facts there, nothing useful. That's about the extent of what she said that was actually a true statement. Page then asked Pence if the economy, what should America do if it's going to take over a year to recover. Then Pence corrected the record, pointing out that the tax cuts weren't for the wealthy. They were across the board, which is accurate. The average American family had $2,000 in tax savings. I can attest to that. My personal income taxes dropped by over $2,000, and I'm not exactly a wealthy person. And that rising blue-collar wages increased $4,000 in families' pockets. I didn't benefit from that because during that time frame, I had a set salary because my check came from the federal government because I was in the Army, so my pay did not increase. So I didn't see that $4,000 extra in my pockets, but blue-collar workers in the private sector did. I was a white-collar worker, but I did see the $2,000 plus in tax savings. That's a true statement. Harris rudely laughed at Pence when he stated those factual figures because she didn't like it. And her condescending mansplaining, yeah, I know, I'm flipping it around. She's the one doing the mansplaining. And then the point was added, Pence, that we've added 11.6 million jobs, which is accurate. Since all the jobs were lost, 42 million jobs lost, 11.6 million have come back. Direct payments from the Paycheck Protection Program, which saved 50 million jobs. That was a great point for Pence. He hit a home run on that one. And then he brought up the $2 trillion new Green Deal, which he tried to disavow and lie about, and then tried to say that Biden was not in favor of it and he would not be against he would not ban fracking, which is not true. Pence pointed out the president signed the Outdoors Act and has done a lot for conservation. And then he said that Biden would rejoin the Paris climate cohort. True. And that would crush jobs. Those are factual statements. Pence also makes the point that it's a balancing act between what you do to the environment, what you do to the economy. You have to find the right mix. And the U.S. is the only country. This was a fantastic point by Mike Pence. It's spot on. I've been saying it since the Kyoto Protocols of 1997 were enacted in 2000. The United States is the only industrialized country in the world that has consistently reduced emissions year over year over year. Now, to be accurate, we dropped our emissions every year from 2000 to 2008. In 2009 to 2011, you can't count that because the world was in a recovery. And the United States, because of Barack Obama and Joe Biden's feckless policies, prolonged a recession, nearly turning into a depression with their ludicrous shovel-ready projects. She's talking, Harris says, he's going to bring back, he's going to recover, we're going to spend money with shovel-ready projects. She didn't say that because she knows that'll kill his campaign. But utter nonsense, utter nonsense. Harris claims we lost something. I lost my track there. And here you go, ladies and gentlemen. And now you know the reason, because this is where Kamala Harris started spewing nonsense about the economy and lying about how the economic performance of Trump has been a disaster. That's just an utter lie. Any objective observer cannot take the economy from February of 2020 until October 2020 and put it in any relation to what happened from 2016 to 2020. That's ludicrous. That's absolutely ludicrous. Trump didn't create this virus. The Chinese did. Trump didn't deliver this virus here. People traveling here did. Trump took actions, what stopped it, and he was undermined by states and governors, their mayors and governors in those states who refused to follow advice about social distancing. In San Francisco, a la Nancy Pelosi. In New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio. Those decisions, the epicenter of this virus was concentrated in New York City, in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, in Queens, for weeks. New York was the epicenter. New Jersey was the epicenter. That's where the virus was. 25% of the cases in the entire country, 330 million people. And still to this day, it's an epicenter. All this talk about cases proliferating around the country. Nobody around here has COVID. I haven't seen a single person with COVID. I've never met a person in my life with COVID. Yeah, they're out there, and there's a lot of them. But they're not everywhere. They're in places with idiotic mayors and stupid governors. Well, we have a stupid governor, so we have problems in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Not entirely his fault. The mayors played a role there too, but his stupid actions didn't help. They were unconstitutional, by the way, and have been declared so by a federal judge. Anyway, so this is where I made the point, ladies and gentlemen. When she started telling that lie about the economy and acting as if the whole thing, it's like the lie with George Bush. George Bush lost all his jobs. No. All those jobs, 3 million jobs disappeared in the last 3 months of 2008 as a consequence of Congress's intrusion into the private marketplace and distorting the outcomes in the housing market. So that recession occurred because of the subprime mortgage market, which George Bush had warned about in his reelection campaign and then pressed Congress The year after, no action was taken by Bush or by Congress. Congress never presented legislation for him to sign, despite his request for it, because the Democrats controlled that Congress. Yeah, so let's get the facts straight. During George Bush's administration, 8 million jobs were created. 3 million disappeared in the last 3 months. So he had a net gain of 5 million jobs over 8 years. Not particularly impressive, but very impressive given the situation he inherited from Bill Clinton with the economy in recession and then 9/11 taking place. People forgotten about that. So Harris runs this whole thing up. And this, ladies and gentlemen, reveals what COVID-19 is all about. This is what it's about. It's the political hoax that is undermining the historical record economic performance under Donald Trump for the first nearly 4 years of his administration, 3+ years. Fantasy nonsense. Now we know why this is here, because they had nothing in January. He overcame the fraudulent, fake impeachment with no crimes, high crimes or misdemeanors charged, simply political nonsense. He overcame the Russia collusion fake investigation by Mueller and his team of high-priced leftist lawyers and hit jobbers. He overcame the abuse of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and the use of the federal intelligence apparatus to spy on American citizens with no legitimate basis whatsoever. He overcame all of that. The constant intrusion, the constant undermining by Democrats, the lies that led to the blue trickle, not the blue tidal wave, the blue trickle in which the Democrats could control the House in 2018, overcame all of that. Success after success after success. But this is all about undermining Trump. So, Pence hit her again on the USMCA, United States, Mexico, Canada Trade Act, which she refused to sign, one of just 10 senators. A trade deal that finally addresses intellectual property and copyright protections and software and the IT economy, which was not addressed in the previous NAFTA agreement, North American Free Trade Agreement, that's from 30 years ago. So Trump got that deal through despite opposition from people like Kamala Harris, who opposed it on the basis of climate change. It's creating millions of jobs in all 3 countries. Ridiculous. Page then comes up with another piece of nonsense, and she says, we have seen strains in our relationship with other countries. Sorry, I was reading the notes there. So I'm showing what you got. So Paige then comes up with the bullshit. She says, we have seen strains in our relationship with other countries. What strains? What facts are you talking about? Are you talking about the media lies or foreign political leaders who lie like Angela Merkel? Are you talking about the media's obsession? Donald Trump has undermined NATO, which Harris alluded to. But Donald Trump has not undermined NATO. He never pulled out of NATO. Those are all lies. He threatened other NATO countries that if they don't start pulling their own weight and contributing the agreed upon paltry 2% of GDP to shared defense, that the U.S. will withdraw its forces. And guess what? The UK, Germany, well, Germany's not there yet, but other countries stepped up and paid their 2%. Donald Trump has not left NATO. He stayed strong in the political alliance. He's just warned people to start carrying their weight. A bunch of nonsense. Strained relationships. Who? The only strained relationship we have that we didn't have before is with China. But China created that, not Donald Trump and presidents who sat by and let them get away with it. Back to my notes. All right, so she comes up. That's an opinion by Paige, not a fact that our relationships are strained. Our relationship with Israel is rock solid. Our relationship with Taiwan is rock solid. Our relationship with France is pretty good. Our relationship with the UK, rock solid. Just utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Our relationship with Japan, rock solid. South Korea, rock solid. Anyway, then the whole situation where, Harris responds 222, 217. Pence gets cut off at 137. Harris interrupts him, then arrogantly says, I am speaking. After she cut him off at 137 and the moderator let her cut him off, this is when Pence asked her about if they were going to pack the court. And so she just started talking. And Pence says, but you didn't answer my question. I'm talking. Well, yeah, during his remaining 27 seconds, or 23 seconds, which you interrupted. And then she got 2 minutes and 10 seconds to respond, which was supposed to be 15 seconds. At 10:10, 20 minutes before the debate ended, Harris finally pulls out the race card. And she starts playing. And she crocodile tears and the crackling in her voice, talking to Breonna Taylor's mother. And then right after that, right on cue, Paige pulls the race card. Anyway. And then the final question from an 8-year-old. Seriously? Anyway, so now the grades, folks. Let me get back to your comments and address them before I give you the grades. A lot of people left now. All right. Okay. So Ann says, personally, I think that Pence did better than Trump. Yes, I agree. At least the moderator was better than Wallace. That's true. To be honest, I prefer the debate to the Trump debate. The Trump-Biden debate wasn't a debate. It was a joke. Pence for president, Grant says. Pence certainly helped Trump in this debate. I agree. Vote Pence, 2024 presidential debate. I believe Trump had just enough. The media went out there for blood. I think Trump had COVID-19 and his test was fraudulent. He took it, but it just gave a negative result. I don't sweat the petty stuff. I'd rather sweat the sweaty stuff. Spot on, Chris. Call on Breonna Taylor as none of the facts about the case was told exactly. Throwing the race multiple times was uncalled for. And then Ronnie says, thanks for your effort in streaming this debate. I'm going to give you the grades. Don't run off yet, folks. Stay. I know we lost about 10 people, but hang on. Could have been millions. Yep. For her to say this economy is horrible without leaving out the scandemic is intellectually dishonest. Indeed, it is, Scott. Pence, Grant's out of here. You missed the grade, Grant. You're going to have to come back and get it. Hermann von Steiden says Pence won the debate hands down. 200,000 dead, but weeks ago the CDC said the number of people died was only about 9,200. That's correct, Scott, and that was removed immediately because it was factual and they can't have the facts. What was this about Obama having a dedicated team for pandemics in the White House? That's a lie. That was at the National Security Council had a team of people who were focused on that, and the myth is that Trump eviscerated and defunded that team. That's a lie. People from the Obama administration left, and there was no one to replace them. No one was put in there to replace them, and so the team was never fully back straight. The former person who led that team during the Trump administration categorically disproved those as lies when that was raised before. These are old lies that are from 2 and 3 years ago, and she's not particularly well prepared for this debate. She's just grabbing at straws. In 2009, swine flu hit the U.S. and almost 6 million people were affected. No, not 6.1 million, 65 million people, Scott, were affected by it. What's wrong with Robin? I don't know. She's probably just fed up. Her normal reactions. Break the best economy in history of the country. Yep. Break down the facts. COVID isn't bullshit. The political response is the big fat steamy pile of bullshit. Yeah, that's exactly. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what I've been saying. You're in the healthcare sector. You know that. Australia is rock solid. Not sure where that's coming from. She couldn't push out those liberal tears. Yeah, she tried. Some humor. She was one of the children that played with Joe's leg hair. Why didn't she talk about telling a domestic abuser and pedophile that she was proud of him? Ooh, Scott says. All right, folks. Boss Deborah's still listening. Here you go. We lost 2 more people. You ready for the grades? Here are the grades. Let me wipe this off, and I'm going to give you the grades. All right? So I'm going to give you a chance. What do you think I'm going to give my grade to Mike Pence? This is purely subjective, folks. But my grade for Pence, anyone want to guess? Pence. Now, we're using the U.S. grading system, which is A through F, A being superb performance, B being good performance, C being passing, D being sub-performance but passing, and F being a failure. And I can give a plus or minus from A minus to B plus and so on. Bosch says I'm going to give Pence a B. Okay. Anyone else want to take a stab? Want to give him B minus? Says AJ. Okay. All right. Now you guys know I gave Trump B minus. Right. Cordelia says a C plus. B for Pence says Daz. D Stu says A minus. Okay. Anybody else want to take a chance there? Cordelia says C plus. There's a range of stuff there. Ronnie says B plus. B. Okay. If it were not for Mike Pence's running over and for his, I would say, rocky start for the first 20 minutes or so, he didn't hit his stride until 30 minutes into it. I gave B minus Daz to Donald Trump. I was prepared to give Mike Pence a slightly higher grade, but I'm going to give him this grade, which is better than Trump. And then I'll also give a caveat on this. I will say that Mike Pence got a B plus, folks. B plus. I seriously consider giving an A minus. It's borderline A minus, but there were too many distractions, and also he failed to hit home a couple times. So yeah, I'll say close to an A minus, but it's a B plus for Mike Pence. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to give some caveats, explain this just after I finish. But now for Kamala Harris, what grade do you think I would give her? Now, you understand I'm not entirely objective, and I made that clear. There's no such thing as an F minus, Daz. Just an F. D says Corlia. Okay, what else? We got an F minus. We got a D, C minus. Ooh, Bosch, you're very generous. Bosch gave Pence a B and a C minus for her. A Z, no, Robin, that doesn't work. L for lies. Andre's a Z. You guys are having fun. There's a D. Okay, L minus. E. Harris told me there was. All right, folks. The problem I have with Harris is this. I expect her to be condescending. I expect her to be rude. And I expect her to be disrespectful, which she was, and then pretend that she wasn't those things. But the problem is that not a single thing she said was truthful. I've disproven everything. It's all lies. So I have no option, even if I want to be generous, but to give Senator Harris an F. It's a failing grade, ladies and gentlemen. She lied about everything. Everything she lied about. Didn't tell the truth on a single thing. Talked about her prosecuting child molesters in California. She didn't prosecute any. It's provable that she didn't prosecute. Stacks of cases built up against Catholic priests in the San Francisco Archdiocese. Dozens of cases of child molestation and rape. Not a single one prosecuted. Her predecessor prosecuted many of those cases and was prepared to prosecute them until she violated campaign financing rules for the city of San Francisco, for which she paid a $38,000 fine. Because she was limited to, I think, $260,000 or something like that. She raised over $750,000 and spent it on that campaign. And she ran a negative campaign against her successful predecessor and got elected. Nothing but lies. Nothing but lies. F. That's all she deserves. Now, as to the question, did Pence help Trump? Did Harris help Biden? Or did they harm? Harris didn't hurt Biden, because the truth doesn't matter to the leftists. They're going to vote for Biden anyway. Independents who don't know the situation, who don't know the facts, may be swayed by Kamala Harris's lies because they don't know their lies. So she didn't hurt Biden. I don't know if she helped him. We will see. The media will spin this as if Pence was rude and disrespectful, when in fact it was mostly the other direction, rude and disrespectful to Pence. The mansplaining was done by her, not by Pence. But they'll spin it around the other way. And there's one instance where he did interrupt her and it was egregious. But the rest of the time it was all on her. They'll spin it as if she won the debate. But she didn't hurt Biden. I don't know that she helped him. Pence helped Trump immensely, especially pointing out the truth and getting the facts out there about the jobs that have come back, about the performance administration, pointing out the new Green Deal, the tax raises, also pointing out some of the other nonsense. And his response when he was asked ridiculous questions about race. And Pence's response on the climate was brilliant. It was well done. It was measured and it was perfect. And it got her on the USMCA. So Pence helped Trump. How much he helped him, I don't know. But by the same token, I said the same thing about the debates with McCain and his vice presidential running mate who actually helped McCain. McCain's the one that screwed that election and lost it for himself in the last 3 weeks of the race when he was ahead by 5 points after the convention. But in those debates, she actually helped. But so Pence helped Trump. Harris didn't hurt Biden. And that's my thoughts, folks. All right, any last questions from anybody? And I'm going to call it here, and we're going to do it. D-Stu says, good commentary. Daz says, allowing women to worry about their bodies and get abortions without considering once that the infant has a life. Thank you very much for that. But they don't care about that. They don't care about murdering life. It doesn't matter. Only their life, their selfish, self-absorbed life is what matters. It's my body. It's my choice. Yes and no. Yes and no. It's your body. It's your responsibility to take care of it. And if you don't want to be pregnant, you can use birth control or you can abstain from sex. It's pretty simple. That's how it works. Now, if you're the victim of rape or incest or you've been molested, it's a different story. But screaming choice, you have a choice to be responsible about your body and not have consequences that cost someone else their life. Yeah, that's the bottom with that. She tried, Daz says. AJ Lewis, and it was death row at that. She tried to support him and gave Biden a shout out or two. Unfortunately, the news is already spinning against Pence and crediting Harris. Exactly. A shout out of 2000, not 2. They'd rather let the unborn child choose its gender. Ooh, thanks for an excellent, yet again, Corleone. Okay, you're welcome. Then choose life. Definitely an F-. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. We still got 30 people here. I'm going to call it. I know it's very early in the morning for people in South Africa. You're now at 5 a.m. I need to wrap up here and set an early morning. I will stream in the morning, folks. I will stream in the morning. I'm planning on streaming at either 6 or 7 my time. Probably 7. That way I can shower ahead of time and just roll out of here because I have to be at the War College before 9 o'clock for tomorrow's events. So I'll have an early stream of the Stray Voltage and we'll see it. Okay, so if you guys want to check it out, it'll be on. Yeah, it's 5 a.m. I'm so shocked that the anti-Trump movement is not for Biden, but would allow their vote to kill infants just not to vote for Trump. Yeah, no, that's a good point. All right, Daz, you're most welcome. Thanks a lot for tuning in, folks. Have a good night. God bless, and appreciate your patronage of the channel. And we're over 10,000 in the community now. We passed 10,000 today, folks, and climbing. Thanks a lot for that. God bless. Have a good night, and we'll catch you tomorrow here on Chris Wyatt Africa, the Indaba Africa channel. Be safe. And as Big Daddy Liberty says, never trust a commie. As Chris Wyatt says, don't believe a word that Senator Harris says. It's all fiction and lies. There you go. What's this? Lezan says, worked at a national ICU and 22-year-old babies are people but not considered viable according to the law. It is shameful. Indeed, they are, Lezan. You are correct. All right, Lezan is a resident nurse. Thank you very much. Have a good night, folks.